praying, say your prayers, eat your vitamins too. These are all the things that the maniacs do.
These videos are satiric reviews. You don't have to agree, but don't bitch about it.
Hey there, I'm a social injustice warrior, V Infuso. And you know what? I'm gonna start this off. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't want to make this video. Because the truth of the matter is, I don't give a damn about Hulk Hogan. I was never really a fan, and truthfully speaking, I never will be. Hulk Hogan has never, in any context, appealed to me. Never really dug his Ozzy and Tricks attire, his riff-raff haircut, his walrus mustache, or his Marvel superhero name. Nothing about that ever appealed to me. Never really dug his wrestling matches or his generic say your prayers and eat your vitamins promos. And Hulk, we all know you didn't get that big just from eating your vitamins. You got that big by injecting them too. Regardless of my own personal feelings on Hulk Hogan the character, make no mistake, Hogan is by far the biggest name in all of professional wrestling history. Those who don't know anything about wrestling are still familiar with Hulk Hogan. He was an icon, not only in the industry, but in pop culture in general, throughout several different eras. Hogan's star burned brighter than any had before, and arguably brighter than any that would come after it. Except for maybe The Rock, because he's doing good for himself. He's doing good. Rocky's doing good for himself. Since we already have a lot to cover with the career of Hogan, I'm just going to give you the Spark Notes edition leading up to his run in the WWF in 1983. Hogan worked in various different promotions, usually wrestling under the name Terry the Hulk Boulder, with his good friend Ed Leslie, who would become better known years later as Brutus the Barber Beefcake. And many other names. Let's not get into that. I already covered it. Don't want to go through it again. He would begin working as Hulk's kayfabe little brother. In 1979, he'd begin his first run with the WWF, wrestling as a heel, now under the name Hulk Hogan, because Vince McMahon Sr. wanted him to have an Irish name. And to solidify his heel status, he was paired with the Big Bad, classy Freddie Blassie. He'd even have his first feud with Andre the Giant and also then champion Bob Backlund.
It's going to be a bad night for Andre the Giant. One of these days, unless you retire undefeated, one of these days someone will defeat you.
Back there, we're listening to what this big monster...
During his time with the company, he'd begin wrestling for NJPW, and holy crap, is that Hogan? Look at this guy go. It's like stepping into an alternate reality where Hogan didn't suck. It was there he defeated wrestling legend Antonio Inoki to become the first ever IWGP champion. He'd also begin working in the AWA, where he'd compete for the title but never quite capture it. Though years later it would be disputed that he actually did win the titles, but not really, so let's just forget about that altogether. Oh yeah, and he was also Thunderlips, so I thank him for that.
The ultimate male versus the ultimate meatball.
That's racist!
It's the biggest arm in the world.
An incredible sight. Standing nearly 7 feet. Weighing 390 pounds. Thunderlips!
Listen, after the match, how about if we get a Polaroid together, okay?
I mean, I'm an Italian guy. My father, of course, loved Rocky, watched it all the time, seen that scene more times than I probably needed to. Hogan would return to the WWF, now owned by Vince Jr., and was basically handpicked to be the company's main attraction due to his increasing star power and Vince's boner. Hogan returned saving babyface Bob Backlund from an assault at the hands of the Wild Samoans. Following his big re-debut, he became WWF champion less than 3 weeks later upon defeating the Iron Sheik. And no, pause, no, stop the tape right there. Sheiky baby, what is that? What is that you got going on? What was going on there? Well, apparently Vince is in good company.
I want to let you know, Hogan, you fucked with me last time. I hug you, you come hug me, you kiss me, you say, Sheiky baby, I love you, fuck your ass.
This may be one of, if not the most important moment in Hogan's career, as in his own words, this was the night that Hulkamania was born. The fans went wild as Hogan became the first man to escape the Iron Sheik's camel clutch, and apparently his camel toe as well, as he took the title off the Foreign Menace. Hogan very quickly became the face of professional wrestling, and that sentiment is still held up by many today. If you ask someone who doesn't know that much about wrestling, they'd probably throw a few names out, and one of them undoubtedly would be Hulk Hogan. Now mind you, he was big in 1980, and currently We're going into the 2020s. He became a major player of what was known as the Rock and Wrestling Connection, a cross-promotion between the WWF and MTV, or just the music industry in general. Keep in mind, this was a big time for music as well. Music videos had just become a thing, and now there was an entire channel dedicated to them. I mean, there was all kinds of cross-promotions between the two brands, with several wrestlers, most notably Captain Lou Albano, appearing in almost a handful of Cyndi Lauper's music videos. And it was the same vice versa, with artists and celebrities of the time, most notably Cyndi Lauper, appearing in wrestling segments on the WWF. And it was during this time, Hulk even got his own animated TV show. And hey, wait a second, that theme, you know what? That gives me an idea.
I hate this channel.
Where was I going with all this? Oh yeah, Hogan even had his own animated series, which featured him and a decent chunk of the at the time roster. Though naturally it wouldn't feature Hogan or any of the roster voicing themselves because I guess that would just make too much sense. No, instead we got Brad Garrett doing his best Hulk Hogan impression.
Thanks, dude. Attacks will do just that. The mayor's a crook. Wendy's right. We'll find another candidate.
Alright, Krang. Lauper would present Captain Lou with an award, which deeply offended the world's toughest man in a skirt, Roddy Piper, who is also one of the very few people in my life I've ever deeply idolized. Skirt aside. And you know what? The man has a right to be pissed off. I mean, you're just gonna give Captain Lou that award? Roddy was in the Goonies music video too, where's his praise? The Hot Rod would return this disservice by smashing the award over Captain Lou's head and putting the boots to Cyndi Lauper. Come on, man, that girl just wanted to have fun! In the process, he'd create a rivalry with his soon-to-be arch-nemesis, the Hulkster, who of course defended their honor because Hulk Hogan symbolized all that was good in the world at the time. My, how times have changed.
They say Hulkamania's running wild.
This, of course, would lead to the War to Settle the Score, an event based around the feud between Piper and Hogan, an event which aired on MTV at the time. An event which, ironically enough, wouldn't settle the score between the two as the match ultimately ended in a DQ and their rivalry persisted. So, you thought once in a lifetime was the first time we were lied to, you were wrong. As a matter of fact, I'd say it's safe to say that the war raged on following this. This was just one short battle in the midst of what would amount to a war between these two men. Following this, everyone's favorite A-Team member and Hogan's real-life friend, Mr. T, would get involved after being attacked by Piper, Ace, and Paul Orndorff. And in an extremely ass-backwards moment in professional wrestling, a singles match between two major names was used to build toward a tag team match on the grandest stage of them all. Mr. T, yes, that Mr. T would team up with the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan, as they battled against the Hot Rod, Roddy Piper, and Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, in the main event of the world's first ever Wrestlemania. It was a classic and is a monumental moment not only in the career of every man in the ring that night, and also Mr. T kind of, but also just in wrestling in general. And the main event of wrestling's first ever Super Bowl ends with a screwy finish as Bob Orton comes off the top rope using the cast of his clearly very broken arm, because God only knows how long he's had that thing on. And as Randy Orton's dad attempted to hit Hulk Hogan, he instead accidentally nailed Orndorff, which gave Hogan the victory. So not only did the big bad not get pinned, but his second, hell, maybe even his third in command, takes the pinfall after some tomfoolery. In the biggest show of the year, the first of its kind. All to culminate this, as some cowboy-hatted Texans would say, this slobber knocker of a rivalry. The first ever WrestleMania main event, which was not only not a title match, but a tag team match, ends like that. I know it sounds like I'm somewhat regurgitating all this information, but I'm actually just trying to process all of it. They also had another match for a Cadillac at one point, and wow, I need to sit down. Now, what's truly amazing about their legendary career-defining feud is that despite winning most, if not next to all of their encounters, Hogan, technically speaking, never scored a decisive pinfall over Roddy Piper. That just doesn't happen in wrestling anymore, and I'm surprised that it ever happened in wrestling to begin with.
Hey, for the Hulkamaniacs, everybody knows I'm gonna face Ric Flair at WrestleMania, brothers. But you know something? I want Piper to guarantee me
If I could just flat out steal an entire paragraph from Wikipedia just to reiterate Hogan's fame and importance. And I quote, Hogan was named the most requested celebrity of the 1980s for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. He was featured on the covers of Sports Illustrated, the first and as of 2013 only professional wrestler to do so, while also appearing on The Tonight Show and having his own CBS Saturday morning cartoon titled Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. As I discussed before, better name for that show is Hulk Hogan and Friends, but then again, all of Hulk Hogan's career could be named Hulk Hogan and Friends, so I'm just going to move past that. Hogan, as the premier WWF icon, headlined 7 of the first 8 WrestleMania events. He also co-hosted Saturday Night Live on March 30th, 1985 during this lucrative run. And I actually did not know that. I did not know that.
Whoa, that's a genuinely shocking fact.
AT&T reported that the 900 number information line that he ran while with the WWF was the single biggest 900 number from 1991 to 1993. In plain English, Hogan was the man. The man was a household name in every sense of the word. You'd be hard-pressed to find a single human being then, or hell, even now, who didn't know who Hulk Hogan was, or what Hulk Hogan did. The dude personified the name Icon, and no matter how you feel about him, you can't deny that he is not only a face on wrestling's theoretical Mount Rushmore, but the dude is also wrestling's hypothetical Statue of Liberty. The next year, Hulk Hogan would main event WrestleMania again, this time going against the big show of his era, King Kong Bundy, who, side note, was one of the nicest men you ever did meet. I mean, I remember meeting him at a sign-in a few blocks away from my house, where he autographed a picture of him standing on Hulk Hogan. Yeah, that one. That's the one. That's the picture. In response to seeing this, I told him, I know Hulk Hogan, meaning that I'd seen the guy on TV, to which he responded, oh yeah? Well, I beat up Hulk Hogan. It was a wonderful moment. I laughed, he laughed, my parents laughed, Bret Hart somewhere frowned. It was a good time had by all. What a guy. Rest in peace, big man. Then there was the time that the company copy and pasted the NJPW machine gimmick, and I don't know what else to say besides this once happened. I want it to be inclusive. Hogan would hold on to the WWF title for 3 years, beating the likes of Terry Funk, Paul Orndorff, and Don Morocco to name a few. And that meant it was time to celebrate. And what better way to commemorate such an accomplishment than with a huge trophy? Also being honored that night was Hogan's buddy, Andre the Giant, for being undefeated for 15 years. Andre was visibly upset with the tiny trophy, and as well he should be. I mean, come on! He was also in that Goonies music video. Have some respect! Andre's jealousy grew throughout that episode of Piper's Pit until he finally grabbed Hogan, sided with Bobby Heenan, and challenged him for the belt.
What are you doing, man? You can't leave like this, man. What are you doing, Andre? You're bleeding. Oh, Andre, come back, man. You don't have to leave like this.
Now, this leads me to ask a few questions and make a few statements. First off, big man, I get it, alright? It's not fair. It's not fair at all. You're undefeated for 15 years and all you have to show for it is something you can melt down and make your pinky ring? You have every right to be pissed. But, then again, you weren't actually undefeated for all that time, so maybe, I don't know, just get over it. Just take your prize and leave. You didn't even earn it. Secondly, can we even verify that that award is that small, or is it just that Andre's hands are that big? Hell, for all I know, these two trophies could be the same size. This feud, of course, led to the legendary main event of WrestleMania 3, where Hulk Hogan defended his WWF Championship against Andre the Giant, who was accompanied by everyone's least favorite weasel, Bobby Heenan. This match, more than any other rivalry, more than any other accomplishment in either superstar's career, is probably what each are both best remembered for. Now, by the current standard of wrestling today, I'm sure you'll find that this isn't exactly, this isn't a mat classic. However, the story heading into this match, and the significance of the match itself, really sets it all over the top. I mean, sure, yes, Andre wasn't even half as mobile as he once was, and Hulk Hogan wasn't exactly a ringmaster. You see that? Do you see that? You see what I did there? Like and subscribe. Regardless of all of that, this match is one of the most fondly remembered moments in all of wrestling history, known to most fans as the body slam heard around the world. When Hogan picked up Andre the Giant and then slammed him back down on the mat, the wrestling world shook. This was the first time anyone had ever swept Andre the Giant off his feet. Except it's actually not, as Ultimate Warrior and even Hogan himself had body slammed Andre in the past, but hey, whatever best suits the narrative here. They'd even follow up that success with a rematch at the next year's WrestleMania in a tournament match for the WWF Championship, which would end in DQ. I would guess it's because neither man was willing to take the fall. I mean, don't quote me on that, but the locker room etiquette back then was a little bit different than it is now. No one wanted to put someone else over and risk their drawing potential by taking an L. Nowadays, you say you're not losing a match, you're losing a contract, you know what I mean? Prior to this match, Hogan was on his 4th year as WWF Champion when he took on Andre again, this time at Main Event. The two competed yet again for the WWF Championship, which surprisingly Andre managed to win, but not without its controversy. Apparently the whole ordeal was orchestrated by Andre's new partner in crime, the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. As the two, get this, get ready, I hope you're sitting, as the two had a random referee get plastic surgery in order to look like that match's regulated referee, to deliberately screw the Hulkster over. Because of course! Now, we all can say what we want about Vince Russo, and most of it will be true, but let's not act like this business hasn't always been a business for complete carnies. I mean, plastic surgery for a wrestling match? Ted, it's not that serious, man. You had a man completely alter his appearance so he could look like another man, so you could get away with this one-time thing. It was only going to suit you one time. Of course, here in reality, the WWF did not actually make a man get plastic surgery to look like some other man. But instead, they had in their employ two nearly identical brothers, Dave and Earl Hebner. Which also probably would have made more sense in storyline as well, but you know what? Why put logic where it clearly doesn't belong? This is wrestling after all. Andre would hand the title over to Ted DiBiase, as Andre really just wanted the win over Hogan, and Ted just wanted additional bling. Come on, man, look at yourself. You don't have enough gold? Then WWF President Jack Tunney would vacate the title for the first time in its history because, unsurprisingly, all of this was very, very illegal. Prior to this, Hogan would begin facing the man who invented Macho Madness, Randy Savage, for his belt, with Savage coming up short in most of their encounters save for a few count-out victories and disqualifications, meaning that he'd win in name only, never capturing the title off Double H. Now, despite his shortcomings in their matches, that's not to say that Macho Man was anything short of spectacular. First off, he got what I truly believe are some of Hulk Hogan's greatest matches out of him, and he was just underneath, or more accurately, right next to Hulk Hogan in star power and name recognition. These were two stars of mammoth-sized proportions in terms of their legend, going head-to-head. Though Hogan was usually declared the winner, the real winner was the fans. Not to mention that despite Macho Man typically competing for the WWF Championship, he was still reigning and defending WWF Intercontinental Champion. Macho Man was so popular that no matter what he did, it became hard to hate him. He was just so intense a personality, and so over the top as a character, that it became impossible not to like the guy. Despite his heelish nature, he began getting cheered, and that didn't really happen during this time period. I mean, not even in Canada, and that place is Bizarro Land. Savage would eventually make a full face turn as he began to feud with everyone's least favorite Elvis impersonator and soon-to-be WWE Hall of Famer, the Honky Tonk Man. Savage looked to regain his Intercontinental Championship off of Jerry Lawler's cousin on one episode of Main Event. Though the match seemed like it was going in Macho's favor, the numbers game would take effect as the Hart Foundation came out and attacked the Macho King. Miss Elizabeth, Macho's manager and then wife, attempted to come to his aid, but to no avail, causing her to head backstage as the Hart Foundation and Honky no guys, it's cool, I'm white, I can say that word, continued their assault. Elizabeth would return with Hulk Hogan, who would come to the ring and save his former rival. After the save, Macho Man extended his hand to the Hulkster and a friendship was formed. And let me just say, this might be the exception to my Hulk Hogan sucks mentality. The Mega Powers were actually something impressive. 2 top names, 2 main eventers teaming together.
When the madness met the mania, 2 mega powers.
I'm just kind of a little worried about locking up here. It's all right. Because we just might blow the whole planet up. There was a whole other universe out there.
You mean to tell me there is another solar system, Macho Man?
Unbelievable. I'm still in a state of shock with the mega powers. Yeah. Mega powers, yeah. I'm just worried about where we're going from here. Is it this stratosphere, man? Is it the ionosphere?
Saturday night's main event, the Mega Powers, the Madness, Macho Man Randy Savage, and the heavyweight champion and Hulkamania.
What the hell is that?
I don't know if the wrestling world has ever quite gotten a pair like this again. I mean, this would be like if John Cena and Randy Orton started teaming together. And it didn't suck. It would be like if John Cena and Batista started teaming together. And it didn't suck. I'll tell you what though, these guys were close. They were close for their respective time period. You can hate me in the comments, I get it. And just to really hammer home this pairing, they would literally repeat the same exact spot, this time with Ted DiBiase, Virgil, and Andre the Giant. And look, I could see them doing this again, but reversing how it plays out with Mach saving Hogan this way that they're even. But this just makes Macho Man look like he's a damsel in distress. I mean, why? Why would you do it? Now back to the future. Wrestlemania 4. Hogan and Andre had gotten double DQ'd in their match, meaning that neither man would go on later on that night to compete for the WWF Championship, leaving the main event of that year's WrestleMania to be the Macho Man Randy Savage, oh yeah, versus the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, for the vacant WWF Championship. Andre would appear in the corner of DiBiase and would involve himself in the match, helping aid Ted to the dismay of the Macho Maniacs. Until Miss Elizabeth went to the back and got Hulk Hogan, and you know what? I'm just starting to notice a pattern here. How many times does Hulk Hogan need to save Macho's ass in order for everyone backstage to be satisfied? We get it. Hulk Hogan is Superman, but why are you making Macho Man Lois Lane? The saddest thing about all of this is the best part of Hulk Hogan was his tag team partner, so why was this their entire run? This should have been a Batman-Superman team-up. Except this time it doesn't suck. And you've spent most of it making one of the most legendary wrestlers look like, at best, Jimmy Olsen. Hogan would not only play a major part in this match, but would pretty much win it for Macho Man by saving him from the $1 Million Dream with a chair shot, allowing Mach to hit his elbow drop and get the win. Hogan would leave for a while before returning at SummerSlam to join his best buddy, Randy Savage, in taking on, you guessed it, Ted DiBiase and Andre the Giant, in a match billed as the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks, with the future governor of Minnesota, Jesse the Body Ventura, serving as referee for the match. And that led to an interesting dynamic, as Jesse was always very vocally anti-Hogan, and is even more so to this day, ironically, and always pro-Macho Man. So how did that match end? I mean, this is such an interesting dynamic. Was Jesse going to screw over the Mega Powers because he didn't like Hogan, or would he play to them because he liked Macho Man? How did this match play out? How did it end? With Miss Elizabeth showing some skin to cause a distraction. Oh, of course. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Sure. I mean, why bother? You know, why put effort? The team would then go on to feud with the team of the Twin Towers. And there's a comment there that I'm not going to make.
Are you going to continue your terrorist attacks with one goal in mind, to defeat, or should I say demolish, the Twin Towers?
Oh yeah, Mean Gene, I can still feel the pain when that cold steel bit until the Twin Towers come crumbling down.
Tensions began to rise within the team as Macho Man began to feel that Hogan was getting too comfortable and maybe a little bit too friendly with his wife, Miss Elizabeth. And you know what? Maybe he was. Macho Man began to become jealous and resent Hogan, especially after he unintentionally endangered Elizabeth by having her stand at ringside during his matches. This further escalated by Hulk Hogan allegedly accidentally eliminating Macho Man at that year's Royal Rumble. In one particular match against Boss Man and Akeem, Savage was thrown onto Elizabeth, knocking her out. Hogan took it upon himself to carry Elizabeth to safety, leaving Savage to fend for himself. Hogan returned to the ring where he'd call for a tag and in turn be tagged across the face. Savage split, leaving Hulk Hogan to destroy the Twin Towers and win the match all by himself. Because of course he fucking did. Of course he did. What couldn't Hulk Hogan do? If Vince and WWE had it their way, Hulk Hogan would have been the first man to walk on the moon. Hulk Hogan was the man who threw Anne Frank and her entire family over his shoulder and escorted them to safety, and he bitch-slapped Adolf Hitler with his free hand. This is the man who single-handedly ended the Civil War and freed the slaves. I mean, Hulk Hogan's the only man who could fix the Flint, Michigan water crisis. The guy's incredible. He's a marvel. You know all those really lame Chuck Norris jokes from like 10 years ago? Well, WWE practically built Hulk Hogan's career off of them. Following this, Hogan went backstage to check on Elizabeth. And that's when the Mega Powers exploded.
I'm not number 3 in the Mega Powers. I'm number 1. You got jealous eyes right there. Right there, you're looking at me with jealous eyes. You're jealous because I'm the World Wrestling Federation champion now. And I'm going to be a long time from now. No, you didn't wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. Those eyes right there. Those eyes. Lost Elizabeth.
Try and talk some sense into this guy, man. Try and talk some sense to it.
And I mean, just look at that blast radius. It blew the shirt right off Brutus Beefcake. Hogan would follow this up by challenging Macho Man for the WWF Championship at Wrestlemania, a match which Macho Man agreed to. Elizabeth announced that she'd stand in a neutral corner during the match. And wait a second, I know he's the heel here. Like, I get that he's the bad guy, but Liz, Macho is your husband. I don't know, with decisions like this, it makes me wonder if Macho Man had a right to be concerned. The two would face off in the main event of WrestleMania 5, and as I said before, Macho Man always managed to get the best out of Hogan. And this may very well be my favorite Hulk Hogan main event. Elizabeth was actually eventually ejected from ringside for interfering on both parties' behalf, which honestly doesn't sound too beneficial for either man at all. As a matter of fact, Liz, I would say that's entirely counterproductive to what you were trying to accomplish here. I mean, look, if you care about both men, you just stay out of it. If you keep stopping each man from getting the win, then they just keep on fighting. You know, they keep getting hurt. What's the end goal here? Regardless, the match, like so many other Hogan Mania main events at the time, is a historical classic that many fans of the era still have fond memories of to this day. Of course, like all their encounters, Hogan's arm was raised at the end, securing him yet another WWF Championship reign. Oh, great. It's just great. This, however, wouldn't end their issues with one another. They'd only continue their feud from there, with Savage actually going out of his way to replace Elizabeth with Sensational Sherry as his manager. Now, during this time, as stated plenty of times before in this review, Hogan's star power was unrivaled. So, of course, the WWF at the time looked to capitalize off it in any way possible. And what better way of capitalizing off some random pop culture icon in the 80s than by making a shitty movie with them as the lead? I mean, come on. Andrew Dice Clay got his own movie, didn't he? Who else remembers Cool as Ice? I know I don't want to. The movie in this case being No Holds Barred. A movie which, ironically enough, had absolutely nothing to do with No Holds Barred. I mean, can you imagine that? That's like if Snakes on a Plane was a biopic about an accountant. That's like if Wolf on Wall Street wasn't about a wolf. Okay, you know what? Bad example, but you get my point. The movie was a bomb, and not in the sense that Hulk Hogan blew up after it, but in the sense that watching the movie would just make you wish you exploded instead. That was shit. I'm gonna cut that.
What's that smell?
The movie didn't do so well. So in an effort to hype up their failing project more, they brought the movie's antagonist, Zeus, played by Devo, to the WWF. And no, this wasn't Tiny Lister coming to the WWF to settle some kind of score with the Hulkster. This was Zeus, the fictional character, coming to face Hulk Hogan.
This is Zeus!
The might of Zeus! And if that somehow isn't stupid enough for you, you're like, oh yeah, I guess that's plausible. Let me remind you that Hulk Hogan didn't even play Hulk Hogan in the movie, he played a guy named Rip. So this didn't work on any level. Yet they persisted. But hell, I mean, at least they didn't give him the company's top title, right? So there is that. I guess we have that still. Zeus would align himself with Savage to take on the Hulkster, and of course, as always, Hogan would be joined by his former kayfabe brother, Brutus Beefcake. Hogan and friend would dominate the match, getting the win at that year's SummerSlam, before meeting again at that year's Survivor Series, in which Zeus was DQ'd from the match, because I guess you gotta keep the big guy strong, right? Wouldn't want to end his non-career. They'd meet yet again They'd meet yet again at the No Holds Barred pay-per-view, an event which first played the movie prior to the match card, because someone thought that would help sell the movie. I mean, why not? I bought Son in the Mask because it came with the first Mask movie, so I guess it works. Smart marketing. Of course, Hogan and Beefcake would win the match to send the Hulkamaniacs home happy. Most notably, the happiest one probably being Brutus the Barber Beefcake. During Hogan's title reign, he competed in the 1990 Royal Rumble, where he went toe-to-toe with the fastest growing force in the company at the time, the Ultimate Warrior, who also happened to be the Intercontinental Champion at the time as well. And this was kind of a prelude of what was to come. Hogan would win the match because, let's be real, when has Hogan ever really lost, you know? Do you remember me mentioning it? Because I haven't. But the confrontation between the two megastars would lead to the main event of that year's Wrestlemania.
Look into my eyes, Hulk Hogan! I've looked into the eyes of the Warrior. I've seen the clear vision. Hulk Hogan, look at me, Hulk Hogan. That dark cloud, the darkness that you live in, once you sign this is where you're going to remain. Normal things that normal people adhere to mean nothing to me. The positive light of the training, the prayers, and the vitamins will prove at WrestleMania 6 that Hulkamania is still the strongest force in the universe. You, Hulk Hogan, do not believe that it is real. I know exactly what's going down with you, brother. You, Hulk Hogan, have already made a mistake. Step into the darkness once again. But you, Hulk Hogan, know as well as I do that they are only receptors for the powers that we have. I've got all this, I've got this with me. As I take two and become one. Lightning never strikes twice in the same place. Kick the cockpit door down. I thought about tying the Warrior up, wiping that war paint off his face. Take the two pilots that have already made the sacrifice. The darkness that you press your opponents into. If you ride your Harley Davidson side by side with a devil.
I don't get it. I don't know what it's about. A champion versus champion match, with both titles on the line, in the main event of the biggest show of the year between two of the most iconic men in company history. This was something truly awe-inspiring, as neither man was heel, forcing the fans to choose between who they wanted to see leave that night as a dual champion. Sure, their match isn't what today's standards of great matches would be, but the atmosphere of the event and seeing two heroes duke it out to see who the better man was is truly indescribable. Words can't do it justice. Ironically enough, years later, they would have a rematch, which, truthfully speaking, you could say the same thing about. It was truly indescribable, and words couldn't do it justice, but that was for different reasons, which we will cover later on this channel. Regardless, this match was a passing of the torch moment, as Hulk Hogan's unforgettable title reign came to an end, with the Ultimate Warrior becoming the first man to hand Hogan a defeat at WrestleMania, leaving that night with both titles in hand. Of course, like most moments with Hogan, this became more about him than his opponents, as the cameras seemed more intent on showing a crying Hogan gracefully making his exit, rather than Warrior celebrating in the ring with both his belts. Unfortunately, Warrior wouldn't continue as a dual champion, as it was deemed that no man in the company could carry both titles. So then why make the match? Why book it as a winner takes all if the winner literally has to give up one of those belts at the end? I don't know. I don't know. Hogan would move on to a feud with everyone's favorite oddity. That one. That's the one right there. That's the guy. Earthquake, in which he pretty much completely buried the big man, dominating their entire feud. I mean, I understand the logistics here. Hogan was just handed a huge loss, and the company wanted to show that he was still strong. He was still the balding Superman everyone knew and loved. I mean, he wasn't just going to fade into the rest of the roster. We weren't going to see this guy feuding with the likes of Barry Horowitz anytime soon. He'd also win that year's Royal Rumble, becoming the first man to win back-to-back Rumbles. Around this time, the Ultimate Warrior's run was considered a bust, as he wasn't making the company the money or selling the merchandise that they'd expected him to. So he'd lose his title to the former all-time American Sergeant Slaughter, who'd recently turned on his country siding with Iraq. Or Iran. I don't know, they're all the same in America. Because I mean really, there's the USA, there's all the other English-speaking countries, and then there's all the other ones full of evil foreigners. At least that's what wrestling taught me. And that sentiment was even greater back then.
Saddam Hussein did not invade Kuwait. He conquered Kuwait. أيها الأخوان العرب إن الرئيس Saddam Hussein would
to send to me, Sergeant Slaughter, a special gift. Look at Saddam Hussein has sent to me. This is Americana, is it not?
And he typifies everything that is American.
What I see is an infidel. Oh, fly, Hulk Hogan.
Maybe easy to do that to a piece of cardboard.
They're his rules.
Hogan would rise to the challenge, taking on the one-time G.I. Joe in the main event of Wrestlemania, where Hogan, very predictably, won, becoming champion yet again. It should be noted that the ticket sales for this were so bad that the WWF would actually have to switch to a smaller venue. So not only was this story in bad taste, but it was also in bad business. Following his feud with Slaughter, Ric Flair would debut with the company carrying the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, and proclaiming himself the real World Champion, with Hogan's nemesis Bobby Heenan accompanying him and singing his praises.
What is that?
This happens to be the real championship belt.
That's not Hogan's belt, Brain.
The real world champion Ric Flair's on my show. He's going to be coming through you, sir. The greatest world's heavyweight champion in the history of this great sport. The real world's champion, Ric Flair. How many times, how many years you challenged Hulk Hogan?
For 10 years, it's been two names. Hogan, the WWF champion, Ric Flair, the real world's heavyweight champion. Well, now,
calling himself the real world champion, he challenged Hogan time and time again to prove what a champion he is. A feud would start between the two and never really stop, as it was swept under the rug.
you don't ignore this.
Allegedly because they didn't draw well against each other at house shows, or they didn't get the reaction that Vinnie Mac was hoping for. How that's possible is beyond me, but let's run with it because that's the story they give. Instead, The Undertaker was catapulted into a feud with the Hulkster, which saw Taker win the WWF Championship off him at Survivor Series, before losing it back to him a mere 6 days later at this Tuesday in Texas. Flair probably still pissed that he wasn't given the spot himself, a spot he rightfully deserved, thank you very much. I mean, look at the guy, he was the real world champion. Interfered in both matches, causing the then president Jack Tunney to vacate the title and put it up for grabs at the Royal Rumble. Hogan and his then friend Sid Justice, I can't remember how that friendship formed, and I have no desire to look back on this time period, or any time period in Sid's career. Hogan and his then friend Sid Justice, which is a horrific name for a horrific man, managed to inadvertently eliminate each other, allowing Rice Flair, as my autocorrect here is hell-bent on correcting his name to win his first ever WWF Championship. This led to tension between Hogan and this giant mullet.
As you have proclaimed tonight, you are going to prove what a true friend can be. And with that in mind, Hulkster, I know you are very anxious to get out to the ring.
Well, you know something, brother.
Which would culminate at Saturday night's main event when Sid walked out on Hogan in a match against Undertaker and Rich and Flair. Thank you again, autocorrect. The two, of course, would main event WrestleMania 8, and let me just say, I'm going to say it. I know you guys clearly see this by my videos, and I know this is why you watch me, is because I clearly stay entirely unbiased in all of my opinions and the reviews that I give, of course. But I gotta say it here. This was a mistake. This was a mistake in every definition of the word mistake. We're talking about a lukewarm feud between Hogan, whose popularity was on the decline, and Sid Justice, who I'm not sure was ever really popular in the first place, with no titles on the line. And their feud was made up of misunderstandings and jealousy. There wasn't anything to really be gained here. This wasn't the match that was going to put asses in seats. You had Savage and Flair going one-on-one for the WWF Championship, and you did nothing with it. What? Why? In what world would this make sense? Macho Man vs. Ric Flair somehow ends up in the middle of the card, only for this mundane piece of crap to main event? Seriously, guys, I can't remember a worse main event in WrestleMania history. Even Orton vs. Triple H made some sense. I mean, sure, obviously Shawn Michaels vs. The Undertaker was the real main event to bank on that night, but at least there was some application there. I mean, both Orton and Triple H are main eventers. I don't know if Sid ever fit that bill. Even when he was put in main events, did you ever really feel like he belonged there? Like he was on the same level of the people he faced? Shawn Michaels? Kevin Nash? Bret Hart? No, I don't think so. Can't just be me. And on top of all that, the main event of that year's WrestleMania had no title on the line. It was a grudge feud that the fans didn't care about, and it ends in an undecisive finish. Oh no, wait, it's okay because the Ultimate Warrior returned to help out Hogan. I guess that makes it better, right? The answer is no. No, it doesn't. Hogan and Warrior briefly teamed up following that. But at this point in time, Hogan's star was steadily decreasing, and it was only made that much worse when the steroid scandal within the WWF was made public, with Hogan being the major name that was indicated in that scandal. Not only was he a steroid taker, but he also publicly lied on the Arsenio Hall show that he'd never taken any.
Your name came up recently when a doctor got himself into trouble.
That's the problem. See, people read the paper to be informed. And sometimes you read the paper and you get misinformed. I was with one of the patients of this doctor, and then later on down the line, he got into all these other things that involved a bunch of illegal mischief. The papers printed these lies as fact, and it hurt me. I'm a real American. I love my family. I love my God. I love all my people that believe in me. I've trained 20 years, 2 hours a day to look like I do. I was insulted. All you gotta do is take a pill or take a shot in the butt every day to get to look like Hulk Hogan. I'm not a steroid abuser, and I do not use steroids.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God, stop your fucking lying.
Now you have to remember where we were at this time as a society. I think nowadays when a scandal like this comes up or is made public, a lot of people shrug their shoulders because we're used to a lot worse, you know? Because now, when a public figure is caught up in a scandal, it's usually something like along the lines of someone being an abuser of some kind, or leading an illegal sex cult with minors, and I'm looking at you, R. Kelly. But back then, these things were unheard of. So the idea that Hulk Hogan had lied to all his fans and was taking illegal substances seriously put his career in jeopardy. And honestly, my take on all this is that it's hazardous to your health. You know, you should be careful about what you put in your own body and how much you're putting in, but who cares? You know, there's worse things you could do in life. Look, all I'm saying is that even Captain America had to use super soldier serum. Alright? Let's just be real with each other. Hogan would return to the company, though, to help out his longtime friend and probably the president of the Hulkamania Club, Brutus Beefcake, in his feud with IRS and Ted DiBiase, better known then as Money Inc. Brutus, like the good fanboy that he was, took to wearing Hulk Hogan's colors, because of course he did. While Hogan dubbed their team the Mega Maniacs. Yeah, okay. You know, somehow, I just can't put my finger on it, but here, let me try. Somehow this falls short of the Mega Powers mark. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Even when they were joined by one of the greatest managers of all time, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. It's not the same. You can't make me feel that this is the same. It's not.
Can you believe this? Jimmy Hart, manager of the Mega Maniacs, baby, wearing the red and the yellow. It's no big secret, man, and I've told the Mega Maniacs everything I know about you two guys. You know, I have to pinch myself every morning that I get up. And here he is, the one, the only, one half of the Mega Maniacs, Hulk Hogan.
And Brutai doesn't mean traitor in this case. Brutai means blood brother, friend till the end. As the Hulkamaniacs see the drops of sweat dripping on the Hulk Hogan's pythons, that will be the only means of survival. The only thing that's going to be left of your pocket change is going to be floating in the bottom of that pool right there, right in front of Caesar's palace. I won't harm a hair on the chinny chin chin of not even the littlest Hulkamaniacs. You two goofballs are going to be flopping around like a couple minnows trying to find a spare quarter. The bad news is, Money Incorporated, Brutus can't be
Surprise!
The only thing I'm worried about, Hulkster, is that we're gonna blow the needle off the Richter scale because you pulled me so high up in the air above Caesar's palace. Well, thanks to all our friends at the NASA Space Center down in Cape Canaveral, Florida, Hulkster, because they put the best together for me, brother.
What you gonna do, Money Incorporated, when the Mega Maniacs run wild on you?
It's indestructible.
They challenged Money Inc. for their tag team championships at that year's WrestleMania in a losing effort. But this night wouldn't be a total loss for the red and yellow. Hogan would earlier in the night challenge the winner of the main event of Yokozuna versus Bret Hart for their WWF Championship. Yokozuna would accept Hogan's challenge as Hogan came out to help Bret leave the ring. Hogan accepted, winning the match in a matter of seconds, and holy shit! Bret, you know what? I make a lot of comments about Bret, but Bret might have every right to be the bitter fuck we all know him to be. I mean, he just had a full-blown match, and immediately Hogan comes out and does what he couldn't do. What a burial. Why don't you just get a double-wide coffin and just bury Bret right next to Yokozuna, because both of them look like chumps now. Hulk Hogan comes out and he just all takes one leg drop and that's it. What makes matters even worse is that Hogan actually allegedly came up with the whole idea, agreeing to win the belt off Yokozuna and later drop it to Bret, which he'd later go back on, instead choosing to drop the belt back to Yokozuna following a screwy finish that involved a fireball at the first annual King of the Ring. And I just to make matters worse here, I just want to remind you, Hogan was on his way out of the company altogether. He was leaving. He was going. He was bye-bye. He was going to greener pastures. Hulk Hogan was leaving the building. And he couldn't even just put the next guy over cleanly. Tell me, Hulky, because I've wondered this for years, what's bigger, your ego or your bald spot? This match was both Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart's exit from the company. And that was Hulk Hogan's initial run with the WWF. And I'm actually forced to cut it here because this has already gone on much longer than I'd anticipated, so it looks like I'm forced to break this video up into two. Great. That's great. That's just what I wanted to do.
It's just miserable. Just miserable. It's miserable. Just miserable. It's a miserable situation. Just miserable. It's miserable. It's just miserable. Miserable. Just miserable.
I wanna be a Hulkamania, have fun with my family and friends. I wanna be a Hulkamania, have fun with my family and friends. You want to be a Hulkamania? I can sure tell you how to stay on track. You gotta train through your prayers, eat your vitamins too. These are all the things that the maniacs do. Positive thoughts and positive deeds. These are the things that make you succeed.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. You're watching the Social Injustice Warrior V Infuso's channel, dude. So if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too want to become a V-tard, don't forget to like and subscribe, and click that little bell icon to get updates and notifications. Ooh, tell him what up, Mach. Ooh, yeah. Follow the man on Twitter, yeah, because we all know it's not stalking if it's on the internet, yeah. Join the madness by joining the Discord, and if you have a moment of time and a free $1 to spare, head over to the SIJW's Patreon, dig it, where you can request videos, get exclusive videos, and early access to content, yeah. Or go down to PayPal, where you can buy the shirts, brother. But most importantly, just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.